Blair Tuke, welcome to Between Two Beers.
Kia ora, guys. Thank you for having me.
We're excited to have you. You're quite a hard man to pin down. I feel like every month you're in a different country. Is it quite nice to be back in Auckland?
Yeah, back in NZ for only a few weeks, really. SailGP's pretty busy program. So, yeah, we're in Bermuda a couple of weeks ago and off to Chicago next Friday. So, yeah, real busy schedule, but nice to be back in NZ. Been up in Kitty for the weekend, actually, so always nice to get home.
You've said Bermuda there, and Shay and I, discussing this episode, discussed that you'd just recently returned from Bermuda, and there's one question Shay had about that, wasn't there, Shay?
Well, naturally, I was wondering, whenever you go to a regatta in Bermuda, are you concerned at all, apprehensive about maybe getting lost to or from the Bermuda Triangle? Is that
actually making it there in the first place? Yeah. Yeah, well, before we went to Bermuda the first time for the America's Cup in 2017, like, you'd always heard about the Bermuda Triangle as a kid growing up and all the wives' tales, etc., but I didn't actually know exactly what it was, so I think a few of us did a bit of research. Obviously, we weren't genuinely worried about making it, but because everyone's asking the same things, you're like, oh, I actually want to understand this a little bit more. So, obviously, Bermuda's one point of it. Then I think it's down to Miami and then across the Bahamas or something. But yeah, I think it centres all around the Gulf Stream, which runs from the Caribbean up along the east coast of the States and then across towards the UK. So something to do with the weather and that, and a lot of ships over the years, planes gone missing.
No one wants to hear the science. No one wants to hear the science behind it. It's all about the myth.
I had a book called Unsolved Mysteries growing up, which was a favourite, and there were three things I was terrified of, and that was the Bermuda Triangle, nowhere near the Bermuda, but scared of that, quicksand, and spontaneous human combustion. Three things which I thought were going to be a real big factor.
Quicksand was always one after watching The Never-Ending Story, I think. Was that when the horse starts going down in that?
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah.
I wonder why Bermuda were the country that sort of, if they're one point of the triangle, why they were the ones that got the name, like poor country.
Poor probably, branding, eh?
Yeah, pretty bad for the tourism.
Miami Triangle is probably something different. It's maybe quite an appealing thing. I don't know.
Yeah. Tough gig. Anyway, good place to start. So a little bit about us. We're from Hamilton, landlocked. We're not a sailing background. We've done our research. There's going to be some good questions. There may be a few bad ones too. So I feel like that might have been borderline bad questions.
I think you've done me a disservice. I've got the ocean running through my veins. My mum's from the Solomon Islands, so Pacific Ocean, runs through there. I am terrified of being in the water, but on top of the water, I can live with. So
yeah, sorry, didn't mean to sell you short.
Hey, no, that's okay, mate. That's okay.
Look, okay, we've got a wide range of areas we want to go, but the first place we're going to start is a really random combination of characters. And I got fed this story that I think maybe you were about 10, and Christian Cullen, Tana Umaga, and Dom Harvey, who we had on last week, came to stay the night at your family house for a number of nights. What happened there?
Yeah, that's a good story for sure. So, as I was saying before, Kitty's home for me, so grew up there, and it was a bit of a random connection, but my dad's good buddy from school, who he had grown up in Kitty, but he'd moved to Wellington. He was running the Ronald McDonald House there, and he had a connection to the Ronald McDonald House in Wellington, and through that they obviously had connection to the Hurricanes and All Blacks, etc. And somehow through there, Christian, Tana wanted to come on holiday up to the Bay of Islands, so he hit up my parents, said, can they come stay for a little bit? Dom and Christian were good mates from Palmy days or something like that, so Dom came up too, and it was like Christmas time, between Christmas and New Year's, when I was like 9 or 10 years old, and we got these, that was in like 97, 98, right peak. When peak. Christian was like absolutely the man. Then Tana was, I think, still playing on the wing maybe, or just like on his way up, and Dom was, I think he was obviously at the edge then, but we knew him as Baldy. I was listening to your podcast last week as well. He was Baldy when we came up, and it wasn't until later that we knew him as Dom. So
yeah. And what, they stayed for a couple of nights?
Were you running longer than a couple? It was like a week or something like that. Yeah.
Were your parents running a B&B operation, or did they just doss on the couch or something like that?
Well, my little brother Jesse and I, we were sharing rooms at that stage, or the whole time growing up, and I think Dom and Christian actually slept in our room, and we were in the tent down on the lawn. Amazing. And I remember, I'm pretty sure Dom actually slept in my bed, and Christian was in Jesse's bed. But then I just told everyone that it was Christian slept in my bed because he was
He was a big star, right?
He was a legend. Yeah,
It's something. I guess you go into school. Hey guys, you're not going to believe who's at my house at the moment. Look, and Christian, Cullen, and Tana, Umaga,
No smartphones then either, right?
and Tom.
You had to there'd be an element of like having to prove bullshit, Blair, bullshit. They did. You must have had some some actual hard photos.
Yeah, got some actual hard photos. I saw one a year or two ago actually, and it was neat to see that. Just literally, me and my best mate, my brothers, sitting on the lawn with Christian and Tana. Just I don't know what we were talking about there, but epic, and so that's been, I guess, Hurricanes fan ever since then. Because when you got those legends come stay at your house at that age, you're pretty hard to I guess was just like full support from there.
Have you connected with them as adults since?
Yeah, keep in touch with Dom a lot more, and then haven't like a little bit with Christian Tana, but not that much. But a friend of mine ran into Tana the other day actually over at the All Blacks game and the Legends in Madrid.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and he was cracking up at the story too at that stage, so that was pretty funny.
Amazing.
Nice. A few other little talking points before we get into it. A source who knows you very well has called you leather hands, and I'm looking at them now. He described them as the crustiest things I've ever seen. And he said, you've been through all the moisturising brands. You desperately need a sponsorship.
I'm looking at those
looking
now.
at them.
They're fine.
He might have been a bit hard done by then. But I know Dion Nash listens to the podcast. So if Triumph and Disaster want to come on board, would you give those a bit of a rub?
Yeah, I've definitely hit up Dion and the team there a few times. So, no, I guess, I don't know who fed you that info. But, Leatherhand's been something since I was a kid. But obviously with my profession, it hasn't... doesn't help out too much. I've seen, I think some dermatologists some days said to me, the only thing you can do is spend less time in the water. And I was like, well, that's not going to happen. So then that's been it.
They don't seem bad at all. I think you're being done a very bad disservice. And now you're probably going to have like a complex and put your hands below the desk and not let us eye them up.
Okay, and the last bit of mail is, tell us about the hole-in-one you got on a par 4.
If this is a starter question, it's going to take a little bit to get through this. So, okay. I haven't told this yarn for a bit, so I've set the scene a bit. It was down in Arrowtown Golf Club in down south. We're down there for a friend's stag do. So, I don't play any golf, basically. I can hit the ball okay sometimes, but pretty terrible. But doing this stag do, I think we were playing the back 9 and second, so it was on the 17th at Arrowtown. For anyone out there that knows the course, it's probably not good saying what hole it is because it's going to make it less believable. But it was a stag do. We were playing best. I think we were playing with 4 of us playing best ball, and we were versing another 4 or 5 different groups or our mates in the other one. So we all teed off. I've got a pretty bad drive. I always slice it, so I started super far left, or pretty far left, and it sort of went over towards the hole, and it was sort of like down a little slope, and it was a good hit. And so we were like, and then the other 3 were pretty shitty hits. So we basically picked up their balls on the way in the cart. I was going to stay one thing at this. So right at the start of the hole, because it was stag do golf, we're
17 beers deep.
No, not quite 17. We'd only played 8 holes, maybe. No, not. But I hadn't looked to see what ball I'd hit, because we'd just been chucking the ball back in the car, and we just grabbed one. It wasn't very serious. So that's a key thing to remember, because you'll realise later. So basically, it had gone over this little ridge and run off down towards the green somewhere. We picked up all the other ones, went over, and then we're like, all right, where's this ball to hit from? And we're looking around for ages, and then after probably 5 minutes, we're like, we'd already picked up the other one, so we weren't going to go back to where we were. So we're like, it must have been here somewhere, And then at that stage, I think we'd hit like 2 onto the green or something, and my other mate was like, have you checked the hole? And I was like, nah, whatever. And walked over and kind of peered into the hole, and there's a bloody ball sitting in there. And we're just like, what you know, like, no way. It was like 250 or 270 yards or something ridiculous. And so we picked up this ball, and they're like, it must be. And I'm like, nah, no, you know. But to this day, we'll never know because I don't know what ball I hit.
Yeah. Are you are you celebrating it like it's a hole
Wow.
in one, or are you shouting?
You got to shout the whole clubhouse, don't you? Did you?
There weren't many people. It was pretty much just our stag do party when we got back to the clubhouse. So we did have a few jugs of Spates, but yeah, the guys in front of us, like without like prompting them or telling them what happened when we got there, were like, "Did you clear the hole?" And they're like, "Yeah, 100%." So,
Wow.
and we sort of saw them finishing up. So I don't.
It's going to be one of those unsolved mysteries. Like
Yeah,
the
add it to the
Bermuda
list.
Triangle.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. Right when we got back to like even now, it's 2 years on or something, and you kind of still trying to remember the story a little bit, you know. And it's like at that time, I was like, I'm never going to know any way, like good or bad, you know, from here. So
It's gospel now. It's down on
Yeah,
podcast land. It's true.
That's
Really
accurate
happened.
with the Mail. Said it was described as what, a controversial.
I think dubious was the adjective
hole
that
in
was
one
used
on
to
a par
describe
four.
it.
So yeah, it's nice. It's a good yarn. All right, so let's get into it. So when we get a guest like you, it's really hard to know where to start. But we've decided to narrow in on the ocean race to start with. So to set the scene, you've won silver at London Olympics. You've gone on this amazing sweep. You haven't lost a race in the 49er. You've won gold at the Rio Olympics with Pete. And then 10 months later, you've won the America's Cup in Bermuda. And then after that, you decide to enter the Volvo Ocean Race with Matt Free. Am I saying that right? Going for the Triple Crown, which had never been done before. And so this is the part we're looking through all the stuff that really fascinates. I think it sort of caught the imagination of Shay and I. So we've got a lot of sort of questions to dig around with. But an 11-leg race, and you're out there sometimes 3 weeks at a time, 4 hours on, 4 hours off the whole time, right? Is that how, like, that sounds like hard work. Is that how it was?
yeah, it's pretty much it. So the race starts in Europe and has 10 or 11 stops around the world, and yeah, I think it's 45,000 miles in total. Just because the race has got a few more stops in it, like you don't quite do it in one as quick as you could if you did it like direct. It would only be like 25,000 miles or something. So the biggest extra lengths actually when you we went from Melbourne up to China and then back down to New Zealand. So instead of going just across there, you're doing that big extra stint. But yeah, awesome race. It was something I'd wanted to do right since I started sailing. So I guess the ocean race had captured my imagination. Yeah, right when I started in dinghies, and then I was pretty fortunate that I'd done a sail up to Fiji with my dad and a few friends when we used to have a boat. So doing a blue water crossing when I was like 11 or 12 or something like that, had set it off, and then I think it was right around that same time that there was a 2002, 2003, there was a Volvo race, and I'd read the book and stuff, and there was heaps of cool stories, and I was like, yeah, that's something I'd love to do, just the adventure aspect of it, like the going between countries, and then the competition obviously tied in with that. So it'd been something I wanted to do for ages, and yeah, great to have the opportunity to do it with Matt Free.
Okay, we're going to get buried into the details here because I've got a lot of questions.
No worries.
So 4 hours on, like you sleep for 4 hours and then you work for 4 hours, right? But on those first shifts, I can't imagine you're sleeping off the bat. It's like everyone on sort of buzzing around, you know, looking for jobs to do. And then as the days and the weeks roll on, that 4 hours, are you kind of like looking at the clock thinking, shit, okay, my shift's up, I'm going to go down and catch a kip?
Yeah, so the crew basically, essentially that's what you do, 4 hours on, 4 hours off, and then had a navigator on board that he just floated around and kept up the weather skids and all that sort of stuff. So he had his own watch, but when you're in your off time, you're not getting 4 hours sleep because you got to eat, and by the time you get down and get out of your gear and stuff, so like in a good off watch, you might get 3 or 3.5 hours sleep straight, but most of the time you don't get that all off because anytime the boat needs to do a maneuver or a sail change, you need crew on deck. So you can sail the boat on deck with 3 or 4 people, no worries. So the other half, but then as soon as you do a maneuver, you need everyone on deck. So you might have only just got out of your gear, got in your bunk, been there 20 minutes, and you'll get a tap and saying, "Come on, we've got to do a sail change, or we've got to jibe or tack." So you're definitely not getting your 4 hours off.
Is it like a siren or a yell? Or were they just saying, "Fucking get up here, Billy"?
Oh, Yeah, it depends. Sometimes it like comes down with a bit of a loud voice, or if it's at the end of your, watch and someone's come down, they're like, all right, they'll just give you a tap and sort of say, all right, time to go to work or whatever. But it depends. Like sometimes, depending on what sleep cycle you're in, sometimes you wake straight up, and other times you're pretty out of it, But it really quite varied.
I've got so many questions. My brain's going overtime. You mentioned getting out of your gear. Is it like a fireman? Like how long does it take you to get in and out of like the cold weather stuff particularly?
Yeah, there's a big difference from when you're in the Southern Ocean to when you're going across the doldrums or the equator, when you're just going on deck in pretty much just shorts and a t-shirt, you're pretty much straight up. But yeah, in the Southern Ocean, sometimes it can take probably 15 minutes to get ready, because you're really trying to get into your bunk and just like pretty light thermals. You've got a thick sleeping bag, so you don't want to, well, the number one rule is that you don't want to get your bunk or your sleeping bag wet. So you get out of all your wet gear and just go down to your sort of first base layers, because you wouldn't be very popular with your mate that you do it's basically hot bunking. So you haven't got a bunk each. You are always opposite someone. So when at least the sleeping bag's warm when you get in.
Yeah.
Wouldn't want to be bunking with Amber Heard or anything like that.
You seem to bring her up every episode.
It's really topical right now. I'm really following. I don't know what I'm going to do.
People are going to be listening to us in a year's time. Say, why is he always talking about Amber Heard?
Yeah, true. I forgot about the timestamp thing. Sorry.
Yeah. Anyway, okay. So, like, how hard when you're on for 4 hours? How hard are you working? Are you at sort of 60%, 70%, or is it really, really tough?
It really depends on the conditions, but yeah, pretty much you're on the whole time. So the time actually goes pretty fast. So I guess life becomes quite simple when you're doing the ocean race, because you're just basically trying to make the boat go fast, eating and sleeping, and that's kind of it. And you're just like in this cycle for 2 or 3 weeks at a time, and then obviously you get the stops at each city you go to, but then you're back into it again. So yeah, when you're actually on deck, the time goes relatively fast. You change up the jobs within that. So say like when you first get on deck, you might be just grinding for the people trimming the sails, or then you might be trimming the sails, or you could be then driving. So that's kind of how my watch was. I'd get on and I'd sort of just be on the grinding handles for the first hour, and then I'd normally trim the sails for a couple of hours or an hour and a half, and then drive for an hour and a half at the end. So yeah, you're kind of changing it up.
What does trim the sails actually mean? Because I hear a lot of sailing terminology, and it's very familiar. I don't actually know what any of that means. Grinding, I know. I just remember Craig Monk was a grinder way back in the day.
Yeah, he came to Kitty Kitty High when I was like 14 or something. Actually.
There it is. Trimming the sail, is that like tightening them?
Yeah, or when you're pulling it on, that's tightening the sail, and then I guess you can ease the sail as well. So if you're the trimmer on predominantly the mainsail, when you're going like a lot of downwind stuff in the ocean race, you're changing that angle of attack, or like the sail in and out on the mainsail.
Right.
So there's a trimmer that will be pulling it on, and when someone needs to grind to pull it on to create that power, and then I guess it's a free ease around the winch to ease it. So yeah.
There's no room for, this is a nautical term, there's no room for slacking though, is there? Like if you're crew, you can't duck off and like have an off day, right? You're not ringing in sick, are you?
Nah, but you like, because sleep deprivation is such a big thing on those boats. You really want the people on deck to be busy, like as busy as you can, and then if you're not working hard, then you should be sleeping, because at some stage it's going to get tough. Like even if you've got an easy day, or easy couple of days, that at some stage there'll be a big weather system you got to get through, or you'll need to do a lot of maneuvers. So you really have to try and just be super efficient with your time the whole time.
I imagine, is it kind of like a mental roller coaster? Like, are there times when you're in the middle of the ocean, in the middle of nowhere, you're loving life, thinking this is the best job in the world, and then you're going through one of these storms or something, and you're freezing cold, and you can't sleep, and you're thinking this is fucking shit?
Yeah, you get the highs and the absolute lows, but that's what makes, I guess, the low points make the high points better. And the cool thing is, most of the time when you're going in those big like weather systems, you're going downwind, or a lot of when you're in the Southern Ocean you are. So like the sailing is absolutely epic. It's the coolest sailing you can do. You're on this boat, and there's normally when you're racing around here in the Hodaki Gulf or something, you go upwind for a bit, and then you go downwind, and you have to turn around at the marker buoy. Whereas this, you're going like downwind for a week, so you're on this like sleigh ride of a boat with like, yeah, basically with your mates, just sending it, you know.
But
it's freezing cold.
when you do say with your mates, like that crew chemistry, how important is that? Like, is that done by design, or is it just like, let's get some bunch of dudes together and whatever happens, happens?
Yeah, it's super important to get that crew dynamic right, especially in that race where you're spending so much time together and you're seeing people in, you know, the toughest environments, both mentally and physically, and especially when it's, you know, you're sleep deprived and it's cold. You get all these elements which just bring out, you know, put people into situations which you've never seen them before, and we certainly saw that in the race. And for me personally, I went into places I'd never been before. So yeah, I guess it was awesome to get approached by Javi, who we'd race against in the 49, actually, a Spanish guy, really successful Spanish sailor, and he was heading up Mafre, and he pulled together a predominantly Spanish team, but with a few of us internationals. And it was just neat, like, to be, when you've, I guess, been in like a Kiwi culture or a Western culture, I guess the whole time, to then be in this, like, this Spanish team, it was absolutely awesome. Really, really good group of people.
What does that mean if you're able to expand on it, going to places you hadn't been before? Are you talking about mental hardship? Or what is that?
Yeah, I guess mental hardship and physically, like you're running on really not much sleep. Physically, it's pretty challenging at times. Back to the hands, like your hands get wasted just from being wet for so long. So, you know, they'll get, you know, if you go on I guess it's best to liken it to if you're in a spa pool or something, and
It's this guy. I can't stand spa pools.
And
A bath.
your hands start going all, you know, super soft, and so it's, I guess, the same as that. When your hands are like wet for that long, they go soft, and, you know, then you're trying to use them to like trim the sails again.
Yeah, nice.
So, and when they're soft, it's actually not too bad, but you go down to go to sleep and you obviously dry out, and then when you come back on deck, your hands are like everything's dried out. You might have like cracks in your hands and stuff, and then to get them working again is like some of the most painful things you can.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's not just me. A lot of people have issues with their hands on the boat.
Doing my research on this one, is the OBR still a thing? Onboard reporter?
Yep.
So you've got
knowledge.
You've got a guy on board. Everyone's working hard. Everyone's getting out there on the tools, but one guy who's just there, whose job is just to document everything.
Yeah.
He's taking photos and writing notes. Does he get a bit of shit from the crew?
Yeah, he does. Our guy, Ugo, I actually see him now. He does a videographer for the Spanish Sail GP team, so I see him around lots, which is cool. But I guess this Volvo or the Ocean Race in 2017, 2018 was the first time that they'd had OBRs, which were like in a central pool of people. So that before that, they'd had the same sort of onboard reporter, but that person had been part of the team and been training with the team for like the 2 or 3 years leading up. So they really felt super part of the team. Whereas this one, Hugo was part of our team, but he was also in the central pool, and he kind of listened not to us. And there's some strict rules about what he could and couldn't do. So there was, I guess it had changed a lot where that person, like, yes, they were taking photos and doing all the video stuff, but then they would help out, like,
They also pitching in.
they'd pitch in, they'd cook people food, they'd do the bilges, they'd do, you know, when you do a maneuver, you got to move all of the gear both up on decks, all the sails, and then all the food bags and all the gears downstairs need to change from one side of the boat to the other. And, you know, that person would normally chip in, but he would grab his bag and his like drone box, which was allowed to, and he would move that, and we're like struggling for all this other stuff, and then he would just be like, "No, I can't touch him." We're like, "Mate, we're in like the middle of the Southern Ocean." As if anyone's gonna just give me a hand, brother. I'm like battling here.
That guy's chat must be so important. I'd love to help guys. You know, the rules are the rules, and
then they would go do like more of a normal shift because they can't film at nighttime a lot. So then they'd go and just be in his bunk for like 6 or 8 hours straight, and you like just miss. If we're going on straight line, obviously we have to move him before. But he got better at the end of the race, and I think the organisers actually like softened up on it a bit because it didn't work as well as what previous. But yeah.
Imagine the resentment building up
Yeah.
towards that guy,
Yeah.
like on day 22, and you just see him snoozing in his bunk for the 7th hour in a row.
Playing a Sudoku. Just,
Yeah.
I got it.
Yeah.
This guy. You must have seen some shit out there, like biggest wave, like huge waves. What have you seen? Whales? Like what did you see?
Yeah, I guess you get to see the ocean in the most raw, powerful form of itself, I guess, and that's both in like a really, I think naturally people go straight to like the Southern Ocean, all the really rough stuff, and it is super tough down there. It's just relentless. It's cold, wet, it's grey for days and days, and then you get these squalls coming through where you see the big black cloud forming, and then like see it starts raining. Sometimes it's hail. Then like even towards Cape Horn, it was snowing a couple of times out of those squalls. So you're seeing the ocean in like a super raw form down there, and then there's also parts of the race where you're seeing it in like the most beautiful situations, I guess, like going across the equator or up through the doldrums, which is like the convergence between north and south, and like the power of nature at that stage. You see these like clouds forming. It's a beautiful day, like no wind at all, and you see this like whole cloud forming out of nothing, and it might like form for like 2 or 3 hours, and we've moved like not very far. You're going like 1 or 2 knots, just drifting along, not moving, and then all of a sudden this cloud sort of gets closer to you. You get the wind from it, which is awesome. You start moving again, then it pours with rain, and then like all of a sudden it's like that, gone again, and you're just back to nothing. So you get to see the ocean and like, the most unique and like, I guess, just what other people, haven't seen before, which is pretty awesome.
Do you see like commercial ships kind of cruising around, or is the course designed in such a way that you never cross over with them?
No, you do really go through a lot of shipping lanes, but the ocean's fairly big, so you're not seeing them all the time. But
We said there'd be some bad questions, and I want to come in on the back of that and ask another potentially really bad question.
Well, let's finish. So you do see commercial ships.
Yeah, especially, and like when you're coming out of Europe, like we sailed out of the Med, and you're going out of the Gibraltar Straits, so that's like one of the busiest shipping channels in the world. So there's places like that, and then going through the Southern Ocean, I don't think we saw a boat for 2 weeks. So.
Go, stupid question number 5.
I feel embarrassed to ask, but
no.
Pirates? Are they a concern? Are they on the radar?
Yeah, not in the route that we took, but like in the editions before, when they sailed from like Cape Town, in the bottom of Africa up towards Abu Dhabi, and they sort of passed. I guess that's where they had a lot of issues over the years around the Somalian.
Is that right? No, it's not right.
No, close. Yeah, but they did go through the Malacca Straits at that stage, but yeah.
Nice, not a terrible question.
But back to your question on the one about like what you did and didn't see, I guess, and I guess we'll go to it at some other stage. But some of the wildlife, what you didn't see was probably some of the reasons why we formed Live Ocean in the end. Like you always, people say like, oh, what did you see? Was there a lot of rubbish in the water, or was there a lot of debris and stuff, things that shouldn't be there? And yes, there was some of that, but there was also, like, we'd heard stories for years about all the, whales you'd see, all the bird life, and in some parts it was absolutely amazing, but then there was big portions that just wasn't like it should have been. So that was quite a interesting and probably a sad part of the race, just the lack of diversity of like the wildlife.
Yeah, Live Ocean, I'm really keen to talk about that. It's the charity that you and Pete have started up. Was that when it formulated, literally on the ocean race, that you thought, shit, we really need to do something here? Like, had it been in your mind before that, and that sort of cemented that it was something important for you to do?
Yeah, I think returning from the ocean race was doing the ocean race, and once we returned was the catalyst really for starting Live Ocean. So we'd had a passion and a real connection to the ocean right since we were kids, and that's definitely, it's always been the ocean first for me. Like, first and foremost, just love being out in the ocean. It's where I feel most alive, I guess, and then pretty lucky now to have a job which lets me do that like every day or so much time of the year. So I guess always had that, but then doing that race, there was a couple of things that happened that said, like, we came back and said, okay, we want to keep trying to do well in sailing, but we also want to try and use the platform we have in sport to connect people to the issues that the ocean faces, and that's really where the journey for Live Ocean started.
Did that give you kind of like a second wind in terms of you'd achieved so many things racing, but then to have that connect back to the kind of the thing that you were on top of, did that kind of give you motivation more to kind of continue with it?
Yeah, I think for sure what we're doing with Live Ocean, having that right at the core of everything we're doing now and really trying to champion action for a healthy ocean's like given us a huge amount of energy and drive. We still want to keep doing well in sailing, like very competitive people, and there's a lot of things we still haven't achieved yet, but having that real purpose in everything we do now is it's awesome. It hasn't been an easy few years. Like, there's definitely been some things that have worked and some things that haven't, and it's not to be doing it right at the peak of our careers is difficult, like when you're already so busy to have something like that going on. But we're both so, I guess, motivated to use the platform we have in sport to try and change the course of ocean health.
So that was 2017. It's been sort of nearly 5 years since then. What is the thing that you're most proud of that Live Ocean has achieved?
Or is achieving?
Yeah, well, the journey to start Live Ocean was really, when we returned in 2018. Then we spent a year just talking to people in the sector, really, in the ocean sector, scientists, iwi, other NGOs, just really understanding where we could be and us as sports people could have the biggest impact. We didn't want to start a charity to begin with just for the sake of starting a charity. It was actually, we were trying to stay away from that, but after a little bit of time it became apparent that there was quite a gap in looking at the ocean in a real holistic approach and in that wide view, a real diverse ocean. So that was the first year, and then we launched at the end of 2019 and have taken on some great projects since then. We started with the Antipodean albatross, so it was neat to have that project as our first project because we'd had the connection with those birds and doing the ocean race, which we've just been talking about. So in the Southern Ocean, when you're down there and like in all those conditions we're talking about, there's these birds which are just like circling you and following you around, and they've come from the same place you have, like a lot of those birds we would have seen when we were south of.
Is that quite a spiritual kind of a thing when you are in there and you see this symbol almost? Yeah,
absolutely. Like it is like a symbol to and a connection to home. Those birds were, a lot of them we would have seen in the South Pacific were New Zealand birds. They were home on a lot of the southern islands in Aotearoa, so that's pretty awesome. And they're up there making it look like super easy. They're just cruising along like, what are you idiots doing down there? Getting like smashed by waves and stuff. Yeah,
I think that's really cool. It's really awesome what you and Pete are doing and what you've set up. And like you say, you are so busy, and we're going to get to the busyness soon. But to take the time to establish something like this and give something back and make the world better is really impressive. Mm-hmm. I've got a few more questions about the ocean stuff before we move on. Were there any times when you were genuinely scared for your life?
No, I don't think there's any times we're genuinely scared for our lives. But there's times when you have a real understanding and respect for where you are in the situation you're in. Like in the Southern Ocean at times, and it can happen in any ocean around the world. It can get rough, but both Southern Ocean legs we did were really rough, even for I think it had been one of the roughest editions of the race ever. Like, so when we left New Zealand heading to Brazil around Cape Horn, bottom of South America, we went through like 3 big systems, and on the second one, actually, we got the terrible news that one of the other people on the boat had fallen
John
overboard.
Fisher.
Yeah, fish. Yeah. So that's just the absolute worst news you can get. It's for us on board the boat. Like you know that threat the whole time, that you really always got to. The old saying, have one hand for the boat, but you always know that you're clipped in when the conditions are rough. And unfortunately, they'd found out later they'd done a crash jibe, that and then he hadn't been clipped in, and he got hit by the boom or and then basically fell overboard. And in those conditions, as soon as we got the news, that they're not going to find him.
Do you get the news when you're still on board? You're still in the race?
Yeah, we did, and I was actually in my bunk at the time. We'd been through one of I think it was probably the roughest nights of the race. It was super dark night. Obviously, if it's cloudy during the day, and you can, it's like the day we just had yesterday here in, Auckland. At night time, when it's like that, it's obviously really, really dark. You can't see the difference between the waves and the sky. It's just black, and you've got these numbers which you're following, which basically show you your heading and the angle to the wind and your boat speed, obviously, and then you're just feeling the boat under your feet. So yeah, that night was pretty wild. I remember just hooning down these waves, doing 25, 30 plus knots, and you don't know where the bottom of the wave is. You can't see it, and you're trying to get out of the, surfing down this wave before you crash into the next one, and then trying to keep it going. So it'd been a super wild night, and I'd been down in my bunk, and we got woken up to do a maneuver. We had to jibe over, and and as I was sort of waking up, I was coming to a little bit. I heard Rob Greenhill, who's a watch captain on the other watch. He was saying to Juan, our navigator, he was saying, the first words I heard was, because if it's my sister, I want to know. And I was going, what's he on about, And Rob's sister was on Scallywag, the boat that had lost fish overboard. And I was sort of coming to still, and then he was like, just send a fucking email and find out who it is, because I want to know if it's my sister. He was pretty calm about it, actually, given the circumstance. I was like, and then heard, and I'm like, shit. So we had to go up on deck to, and you've got that in the back of your mind. But then we're go up on deck, and it's gnarly still. It's light by this stage, and you could actually see the size of the waves and actually the situation you're in. That's the thing, at night time you don't actually, it's wild, but it's almost, because you can't see anything, it's almost better in some ways. So you get up and it's like, shit, this is on, it's really serious. And so for a little bit there, just sort of really concentrating on doing the next maneuver of our boat, and then go back downstairs, and then sort of understand the situation a little bit more. And yeah, pretty much that, you've seen the size of the waves there. You're like, if someone fell over here, it's really hard to actually get back to get them. No matter, ocean's a big and powerful place. So yeah, I think by the time maybe 4 or 5 hours later, we heard the news that they'd sort of given up the search for him, and were heading to Chile. And yeah, it was definitely a really somber mood on board the boat, and everyone Fish was such a legend, so everyone paying their respects to him, and people do that in different ways at the time. But I remember really coming together as a crew, and just saying to each other how we're still in a pretty tough situation here, and the only way really get through is to keep pushing the boat hard and keep trying to get to Cape Horn as quick as we could. And we'd actually had quite a serious sort of issue with our mainsail and the mast, so we had that extra, I guess, stress of trying to deal with that situation. So yeah, pretty quickly in those, your mind just goes to look, your own self sort of needs on the boat, and we just pushed on for another probably 4 days till Cape Horn, really.
Those shared experiences with the crew together over, good and bad, that's obviously the worst of it, but over 11 legs must make you really tight-knit. Were there moments where it was quite quiet and relaxed that you could do sort of, initiations or drinks, or was there something over the equator that you did that was a bit different?
Yeah, well, when you first cross the equator. So your first time ever crossing the equator. I don't know exactly where it comes from, but you have this basic ritual that if you haven't done it before, the people that have done it basically get, the ganged up on really, and everyone sort of, King Neptune comes to visit them, so that can be whoever. It's normally the most experienced person on the boat will dress up as King Neptune, and the crew that have been already across will have been gearing up for the last day or two for this moment. So any of the leftover food, which would normally be thrown out, or sometimes we get like flying fish would land on the deck of the boats at night time. So any of that stuff which would normally that would have gone back in the moana would just be kept on board the boat, and then they kind of make up into this like stewy thing. And then basically just when you cross the equator, everyone would be up and they'd do this initiation basically, which would normally include getting all that stuff thrown on you and smothered all over, and then some sort of something to do, that take a razor on board or clippers, and I had this big like strip straight through my
a little equator on your head.
Yeah, basically equator on the head. Yeah. So that was, and it was short too. Like when we got to Cape Town, and Pete obviously wasn't on my boat, but we went to the barber at the same time, and the only way to get it out was to shave everything off, Yeah. And our hair was so short, like we both looked like criminals. It's classic.
When you do get into like a port, how long are you there for, and two, do you just go crazy, or do you have to kind of rein it in, knowing that you're back out soon?
No, I think that's one of the coolest things about that race is that experience you have when you're getting to places, and you do feel like you've really achieved something. Even in the legs that we didn't get first, or we arrived into Brazil after that leg and we had got 5th place or something, but you arrive with this like real sense of satisfaction of what you've just achieved, because even if the first your competitors, it's still an amazing a thing to have achieved. So you those times at ports are awesome for sure, and you connect back with the rest of your team, the shore team and the wider support team. It's really tough for them, and families, of course. Like you've just seen them in New Zealand, now you're in Brazil, and what they've gone through during those 3 weeks or whatever it is, where they're living it and understanding every single situation you're in. So you actually, you probably don't get as worried or anything like that. Even with the fish situation, I know that's for sure. Like all the families back home, that's the worst news you can get, and then the worry about how everyone is on our boat, and all of that's it's pretty tough on the family back home when you're out there just on these boats in pretty tough situations.
That was actually a crazy race, right? Like everything we've talked about, 11 legs, and then it came down to this incredibly close finish. And one of our sources said they've never seen you so gutted at the end. Like, talk us through that last leg.
Yeah, so the last leg of the race was it was a short one, just from Gothenburg in Sweden back to The Hague in the Netherlands. We had a couple of little laps around sort of Scandinavia, which I think it drew it out to about 3 day leg, I think. And when those short legs were back to right when we're talking about the 4 hours on, 4 hours off, when you get to the short legs, that kind of doesn't exist.
You're just all on.
Yeah, you're just on, and the end's 3 days away. So when you can kind of see the end at the light of the tunnel, you just go. So you're tired like you've never believed there. Like any sort of change in wind strength, if it was in the ocean, you might just say, we'll just hold this sail for a little bit and it should come right, and if it doesn't in half an hour or whatever it is, we'll change it. And there, like every gust you're changing, every shift you're tacking or driving. So yeah, it was a really tough leg. We went into it tied on points with Pete's team, Brunel, and then Dongfeng, the Chinese team, which we'd had a really tight battle with the whole way around the world. And then Brunel had sailed a really good second half of the leg race and come up. So all of us were tied on points. Basically, whoever won the leg or one of us three, we're going to win overall. So we I think probably 2/3 of the race we led for, and coming into the Hague, there was this point where we had to go around a virtual. There's all these traffic separation zones in Europe or to keep the ships apart, there's so much shipping traffic. So there was this TSS there, that traffic separation zone, which they basically put an exclusion zone around, so it becomes like a virtual island, really. So we were coming into the Hague, and we had to decide if we were going to go like left and go inshore towards the top of Germany and along the German coast and then into Netherlands, or if we went around it out towards the UK and back into the Hague that way. And we were leading, so we had to make the decision first, and we decided to go towards the UK. And Pete's team, Brunel, came that way with us, and then Dongfeng went the other way. And yeah, it was probably about 12 hours from there to finish. And we were showing all the routings and stuff which you have on board the boat was still showing that our way was going to be better. And then the last 2 hours into the finish, we basically went around the traffic separation zone, and the wind angle was predicted to be whatever it was, and it was slightly different. So it meant that we were basically going straight downwind to the finish from where we were around this virtual island, and they were reaching straight in on their angle. So it was tough 20 or 30 minutes of ever experience. Just to we could see them basically just on the horizon or like coming across in front of us, and we'd done this awesome job to keep Pete's team and the boats there behind us, and we were coming in thinking we were, they could have appeared anywhere. They could have appeared 20 minutes behind us from there, and just to lose.
Plus the weight of 10 legs of work on top of it.
And then I guess as well, because you've just been up for basically 3 days, so that it was pretty hard to hide the emotion at the end of that, because you just realised that you hadn't achieved what the team had set out to. And that was, I think, for that group, like that Spanish team, that was like some of their fourth or fifth attempt at it, and they'd come really close a couple of times. And the whole group not to achieve that success was super tough. But I guess once the dust settled a little bit, it was still amazing, and it was what we achieved during that race and the experiences we'd shared. And like you talked about, that those bonds with the teammates, no one will ever take that away from you. And through the good times and the tough times, it was just unreal experience.
Something you think you'll do again?
Yeah, I'd love to at some stage in the future. I mean, we're pretty tied up for the next couple of
How often is it raced?
It's about every 3 or 4 years, but there's a race starting early next year, which I won't do, but maybe the race after that, or some race in the future will be cool. There's definitely a sense of unfinished business there, and just it would be neat to have a Kiwi team in that race again. I mean, this country's had so much history with what was the Whitbread and then the Volvo Ocean Race, and to try and get that back again would be neat.
Yeah.
It's cool, man. That definitely captures the imagination, that round the world stuff, in weeks at a time out on the ocean.
Can I ask 2 more questions?
Yeah, please.
One's not a serious one, and then one is a serious one. Or 3 questions maybe. One, is someone on board in charge of music? Do you have a Yui boom or anything like that to pass the boredom?
Oh, no, we don't have a sounds going as a team, but quite a few people will sleep with their own noise cancelling headphones
that
on.
should be part of the OBR's job.
That's what I would have thought.
Yeah, DJ.
He's concentrating too much on his 8 hours sleep for that.
Second just pure curiosity. You get into port, you get off everything. What's your go-to meal? Is it always the same, or is it vary depending on where you are?
That's a really good question. And when you're out there, you're always thinking I'm going to go get a burger or a big feed of whatever it could be. But the thing is, you've been eating rehydrated food for 3 weeks, and you kind of actually just want some fresh food. So just fresh fruit and veggies is definitely good.
Okay. Supplementary question, which has just come to me.
You
And
can just
beer
ask
too.
the question. You don't need to frame. You just ask.
Yeah, okay. I'm just conscious it might be just like a round the world episode. No one's throwing a pole off the back while you're in the doldrums, not in the Southern Ocean, in the doldrums, and just get little mahi and.
Yeah, we did actually see a couple of mahi because they quite often like come under the boat, you know. But
They predate in midwater.
yeah, but no, we don't take a line on board. But when we were at some stage, the life rafts on board have, you know, like if you
Yeah.
you know you don't want to end up in one of those, but they've got fishing line on them. So I think at some stage we were, it was actually the leg from New Zealand to Brazil. We ended up having to stop at Cape Horn after what we were talking about before and try and fix that. So we ended up behind like the people in front of us and we couldn't catch them. So then we were running out of food because we got stuck behind this weather system. So anyway, some of the team were trying to catch some fish, but I don't actually think they had any luck. But yeah.
Number twos on board, do they just go straight in the water or are they stored?
Straight in the water, yeah.
Okay.
You can either use the toilet,
Yep.
or the head downstairs,
head,
or
slide one
people
off the
just
You'd
sort
slide
of
one
go
off the back,
straight
wouldn't
off
you?
the back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got me.
Bit better for people down below because when they're normally
Yeah.
like you're in your bunks, which is kind of more towards the back of the boat. Like if we're in the Southern Ocean, like going real fast, you're in your bunks. But as the wind, like there's a lot of time when you're in really light winds too.
Yeah.
And then everyone like sleeps forward and you're just sleeping as far forward as you can and you're in the boat. So at that stage you're right up the front and the head's actually up by that.
Yeah. You don't want to be there.
And so and there's like it's like not kosher to use the toilet when people are sleeping up there, you know.
Oh, really?
Well, like you're literally like 2 meters from someone, you know,
Yeah.
and like trying to sleep and it's pretty easy at that stage to go off the back. But
Yeah. Is
yeah,
that a hard rule? Is that written into the...
well, it's not written in, it's unwritten rule, but yeah, it's a couple of times. I think maybe Rob, British guy that was on board, he snuck up there, you know, like someone
broke the rules.
Yeah, it's not good.
there's no escape either, right? You're just gonna have to sit.
No,
and
it's
listen.
not like there's when you're going 1 knot. It's not like there's much airflow coming through the hatch.
Okay, my genuine question is.
Those weren't genuine questions.
Nah, well, yeah, they are. They were, but this is a slightly more serious one. But when you're going through the Pacific in particular, are you having moments in your own mind of thinking like, how the fuck did our ancestors do this in a double-hulled, like wooden canoe? Like, are you thinking that consciously at the time?
Yeah, well, that's an awesome question, actually. That's probably something more I've started to understand in recent times. We've been doing hanging out with the Te Toki whānau, Te Toki Voyaging Trust, and just learning about that aspect of it, of how Māori and Polynesians first got around the Pacific and down here to Aotearoa, and just that's thousands of years ago. They were coming here. You know, the navigational skills alone was phenomenal. How they got here using both the stars and all the different things around them, nature, wildlife, everything. You know, wave angles. But then the actual sailing skills to keep the waka going straight line, trimming the sails to that. It's phenomenal.
Would you do one on those ocean voyaging?
Yeah, I'd
canoes?
love to. I'd absolutely love to. I mean,
I'll put you in contact with my sister.
Yeah,
she
nice.
She lives in the Cook Islands in Raro, so
Cool.
she's really invested in that.
Yeah,
at the
that'll be
moment.
cool.
Yeah.
We did a little trip from Maraetai up to the Bay of Islands a few weeks ago, actually, before we were in Bermuda with the Te Toki crew, and that was neat. They carried on. They were taking the Honui around to Kawhia, so we jumped on for that first part of it.
Yeah.
So it was only 36 hours or something, but it was really neat to get a little taste of it.
Cool.
Just be wary when Shay says he's going to do something with a guest. He told Shane Cameron he was going to do his 12-week fitness program, but have you been?
Whoa, you got to put me on blast like that, huh?
You've been in touch?
No, I'll definitely take you up on that. That'll be neat. That whole voyaging community is epic, right from people here in Aotearoa to all through the islands, and it's something that's just growing super fast now as people understand like that. All of that history, and I think it's a real, shame that, like, for me personally, I didn't learn that stuff at school. It's like, why didn't I learn that? We thought, like, whatever, a few hundred years ago, people were coming here from England, or whatever, and it's like, that's not,
Totally.
Aotearoa wasn't discovered that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
I want to start building the picture of Blair Tuke. You mentioned when you were 11, you sailed with your old man from, was it Bay of Islands to Fiji?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Which is what, like a 7-day trip?
Yep.
Like that seems like quite a big thing to do when you're 11 years old. Was that the moment that cemented your sort of future as a sailor?
Yeah, I think we were pretty lucky that we had a family yacht growing up from probably when I was about 7 or 8, and after a couple of years of having it, I was like, Dad was doing those trips, and I was like keen as, and they wouldn't let me till I think I got to like 11 or 12 or something. But yeah, doing the first one, I still remember now like that. We left Kitty in the afternoon or whatever, and sailed through, the first night, and then getting up in the morning and like looking around and not seeing land. It was like, oh, this is epic. And then going up to Fiji and feeling the difference between, like being pretty, I think it was coming into winter like this time of year, so it was like pretty cold when we left, and then as you start getting further north, you start getting these like kind of rogue warm puffs of breeze that you just feel as you start getting that. So that was, and just being out in the ocean was epic. So yeah, I think that's what really started the journey, and I didn't know where it was going to go from there. And then obviously going into the sailing dinghies and then onto the Olympics.
So you kind of caught the bug there. I'm going to connect the dots a little bit. But when you were 17, you were, check this, world champion at 17, right? And at that same time, you'd moved from Kitty to Auckland and were going to school.
Mm-hmm.
So you're world champion at Splash. What is Splash, world champion?
Biggest bomb.
Yeah, no, I wish actually. That'd be probably pretty good. Splash is like a like a one-person boat, similar to a laser. So for people might know a laser, it's similar to that. It was never that big here in NZ, but quite big in Europe. And we had a good crew that sailed them in Kitty. So Andy Maloney, who we do a lot of sailing with now, started at the same time as me. Brad Farrand, a lot of really good crew, and I think that's what really helped us, just having that, like, because you're growing from a small town, you got to try and find some sort of advantage to go take on the kids from the city, so having that real good team that pushed each other and then would come down to the city and take on them, and then get an opportunity to go overseas and race from 14 onwards, and then to win that world champs when I was I think just 17 was awesome.
So that had turned your head, right? You're the best in the world at discipline when you're 17. You're still going to school, but you dropped out of school, right? You knew that schooling wasn't for you. You'd committed to sailing at that point?
I think it was. Yeah, by the time I'd won the Splash Worlds, I'd actually dropped out of school, as my brothers will be quick to remind me. I say I left school, but they say dropped out. But I decided to take on an electrical apprenticeship. So I think I came down from Kitty, went to St. Kitts for a year and a little bit, and I just didn't. I actually started going pretty good at school at St. Kitts, and really big change from Kitty High, where you've just put in this completely different culture and stuff, and everyone's work ethic, and the teachers were amazing and stuff, and actually got some pretty good grades, but I didn't really see myself going to university, and didn't want to keep kind of wasting my parents' money, I guess, at school if I didn't want to be there. So they sort of tasked me with finding a job before I could leave. They weren't going to let me leave, and had this opportunity come up to start an electrical apprenticeship, and took that on, and had really lucky to have a great boss that just could kind of see what I was trying to do with sailing, but so he was pretty open to me taking quite a lot of time off, so it was a pretty drawn out apprenticeship.
And around this time, you appeared on Big Pete Burling's radar, and there's an email in the Maritime Museum, I think, of him saying, "Do you want to come and sail 49er with me?" Is that around that same time?
Yeah, it's a pretty similar time, a couple of years after that. So I then sailed a few different classes between the Splash and then Pete asking me to sail with him, and Pete had then been to the Beijing Olympics at that time. So he was 17 and I was 19 or something like that.
Did you know him? Is it like other sports where if there's a top teenage kid in another town and you're in that sport as well, you know who they are? Is it like that in sailing?
yeah, we hadn't, because I'd grown up north and the splash wasn't a class that Pete actually sailed, so we'd come kind of different pathways, but we'd race together. I sailed with Andy Maloney when we were like 16 in the 420 class. We'd race against Pete and his sailing partner Carl, who they went on to go to the Olympics, and yeah, they were really good at that stage. Like they'd won the world champs and stuff. I think we got like 7th or something, but yeah, we'd race against them a little bit, and then I got put in a team with Pete and Carl like at to go to the Youth Olympics. So we'd been a team together like when we were like 16 or 17, and then he just approached me after the Olympics, and he was keen to do the 49er, and I'd been sailing those types of boats a little bit, like the skiffs and the Tornado catamarans and like these bit sort of faster boats, and
So you sort of building up. You went to London and got silver, but how long? Which was an incredible achievement for you guys. You were so young, the youngest team there. But how long into that partnership with Pete, when you'd linked up, did you realise you had something really special there?
Well, we just started off pretty casually and said, let's see how it goes. You don't want to put a big goal out there without, knowing that it's going to work. But I think within a few months we had enjoyed, I guess, the partnership and where we were. It was a huge learning curve. Like we were, to think where we were, even looking back now, like 4 years out from the Olympics, or 3.5 by the time we really got into it, to getting a silver medal was it was a crazy learning curve. Like 49 is a really difficult boat to sail when you're starting, like the boat handling and not to capsize and all that stuff. So we were like capsizing loads, we were breaking things, this learning curve was so steep. But yeah, we just lucky we got some really good people around us and helped to, I guess, channel our energy and our drive quite a lot, to have some quite experienced people come around our campaign, like in the 2009, 2010 sort of time. It was we were very lucky, and then the last couple of years leading up to London started to get some good results.
Was it a case of your skill sets complementing one another, or was it kind of like just by sheer force you were successful?
No, I think, any partnership you definitely got to, to be the most efficient and the best together as a team, you've got to try and use your strengths that you have. And I think in a lot of things, when you're on a steep learning curve, the thing you run out of is time normally. So you got to try and use your time most efficiently. And I think we're pretty fortunate that we come at it from quite different backgrounds and different skill sets, but there's a lot of shared skill sets in there as well. And that drive from both of us to just wanting to be better every day was probably the thing that was most in common.
In those early days before you went to the Olympics, did you think, I mean, obviously what you've gone on to achieve is incredible, but did you see a pathway for that in those early days?
No, I don't think I did really. And Pete probably the same, but definitely not for me. Like we were so focused on just trying to do well and do our best in the learning phase on the way up to London that we didn't even think past it. Like when we finished in London, we were just like, we took ages to figure out how we were going to approach the next little bit. It wasn't like, and even going into Rio, we're the same. You just put everything in your life towards that one thing. I think you're pretty lucky, and as sports people, that you can do that. Like you can just, maybe it's a little. Some people see it as a little bit selfish or what, but you put your everything into that one thing. So yeah, I mean, it's amazing the journey we've been on since then, right till now. But I think it definitely started just with that goal of trying to win a medal for Aotearoa.
Yeah, and what an incredible achievement. But when you did win the silver, like at the Olympics, am I right in thinking that the sailing, whatever, village or setup was removed from...
Was it Cornwall?
Weymouth, but on the way down to Cornwall, yeah.
From the other village? Like, did you get to celebrate that with the other Kiwi athletes, or how did you get to celebrate the silver?
Yeah, so we were about 3 hours south of London. And yeah, firstly, it was a celebration with the rest of the Kiwi team there, and like we had quite a lot of family over and stuff. And then, yeah, getting up to London was awesome. I think out of all 3 Olympics, that was definitely the best party and time afterwards. I think partly because there's a lot of, or mainly probably there's a lot of Kiwis in London. They had a Kiwi house at that time, so that was kind of like the point you went to afterwards to celebrate and where people could gather and stuff. So that was epic. And then just like some of the parties that were like put on, and it's like it was pretty phenomenal, really.
No issues with Jake Wilkins leading you back into the athletes' village back in London?
No, Jackie was all right. He's a good man actually, but like the whole village and stuff, that was all new for us because and it's the same. Even the last 2 Olympics, we haven't stayed in the village. We just stay outside and then only go in for a couple of nights and stuff like that. But yeah, the London experience was unreal.
What's your? I've always asked people that were at that. What's your like athlete village memory or your moment where you went, "Fuck, wow, that's cool"?
Oh, look, there's a lot, but just you always hear stories like the food hall and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it's probably changed over the time. But I remember like we ended up like I think it must have been after the closing ceremony, but end up like back at the food hall really late at night, and there's just like still like thousands of athletes there, and just you see these people from all different walks of life, different shapes and sizes, because every sport or like have got different shaped people, like, and so you got like really small people, really, like I guess as sailors we're kind of just like more like normal people, but like it's seeing all them and then just like real late at night too, and it's pretty classic.
It's cool, eh?
Yeah, neat.
And then all the McDonald's you can eat.
Yeah,
It's amazing. I was there.
Oh,
I was in London 2012. I was with the football team.
Oh, well, yeah, nice.
So we decentralised, but I told this story on another episode with our physio. But we had a cheeseburger eating competition before the support staff, before our I think our event started, and I think the women's hockey team put a complaint in their post-game debrief about the footballers weren't taking competition seriously. They were just having a cheeseburger eating competition. I just want to go on record again. It was no athletes. It was physio and team operations. But we didn't.
Did you win?
Yeah, I got him. 13-12.
And how long?
It was. I don't know what the actual sitting was, but it was. Yeah. I mean, I lost 2 days afterwards. It was horrible. Let's just say if I'd been on the boat, that head would have got destroyed. Absolutely destroyed. There would have been no P's and Q's. Didn't matter who was sleeping anywhere. That was going to be a destruction.
All right, so you catch fire after London and you win about 1 million races in a row. And this is probably going to be a difficult question for you to answer, but I'm going to try anyway. You're sailing against the other best sailors in the world, and you don't lose a single race, and then you go and win gold at Rio by the biggest margin ever. So what is it? How were you so much better than the rest, like the field? What was it? What specifically was it that made you and Pete incredibly better than everyone else?
Yeah, well, it was certainly a heck of a run, and I don't think that's really been done before in sailing, to go that many races unbeaten. And I guess the reason it has in sailing, because you're always in different conditions. You might do one race in a light weather venue, or the next one windy, or in waves versus flat water. So it's never exactly the same, and it's hard to be better than people in all of those different conditions. But I guess that's where we got to in the end, and not quite in the end, but like in that from 2013, 2014 onwards, where we went way better in every. We were just like a little bit better in across everything, whether it was the boat speed and the light, medium, and heavy conditions, or the way we started, or the decision making around the course. Just globally, we were just stronger, really. And in sailing, you're lucky because it's not just it's one regatta. It's one regatta or one competition. So we're not beating everyone in every single race, but across 10 or 12 or 15 races in a competition, that's where you can get that consistency. So yeah, it was a phenomenal run, and that was some awesome memories through that time.
There's one story which I think kind of captures how far ahead you were. It was the 2014 World Sailor of the Year Awards, which resulted in a missed flight. right?
Not quite a missed flight.
Not quite a
Close.
missed flight.
Yeah.
Very hungover flight, maybe.
Yeah, that would be right. Okay, that's a good yarn. So yeah, we had this regatta in Rio. Actually, I think it was our second trip there, and like at that stage, 2.5 years out from the Olympics, you're really trying to get as much time at the venue as you can. Rio is a super tricky place to sail, right in the harbour there in the bay, so we're trying to get as much time as we could there. It was like November 2014. At that time, we'd been nominated for the World Sailor of the Year awards, which were up in Palma in Spain. So that was our first time being nominated. It's quite a big thing. So like, okay, we'll go up to that, but then we'll fly straight back and it was the regatta that was going on in Rio wasn't like a big regatta. I think it was the South Americans or something like that. And so we'll go pick up the last 2 days or 3 days of that regatta. It was a four-day regatta.
So you're always going to miss one day.
Yeah, we thought we were going to miss 2 days. To be honest, we thought we were going to do 2 days, and so the result was irrelevant. We're like, oh, we'll just turn up and trying to get the time and whatnot. So we go to this World Sailor of the Year awards. Jimmy Spittle actually won it that was on the back of winning the America's Cup in 2013. So he was there. He won it. And the thing about those awards is it's not like a huge glitz and glamour event. It's actually done at like the World Sailoring Awards, and there's only the finalists for the men and women are there. So there's only probably 20 sailors or something like that. It's not a very big event. So we sort of finished. Everyone's in Palma in like November. There's not much going on. So we ended up at this Irish bar, as you do, and into a fairly large night, or really big actually, and basically had to get a flight from Palma at 6 a.m. or something, so there wasn't much sleep. Go through Madrid airport, which is like a massive airport, especially if you have to change terminals. Somehow, like we literally sprinted from one to the other, getting on trains and stuff, made it onto this flight direct to Rio from Madrid, and we're just like exhausted, super hungover. Like, at least we're here. So we basically slept all the flight, got there. Must have got there in the evening because we had another night to recover, yeah. And then we started the next day, and we were just like, that was the second day of the regatta, and we just started like rigging up the boat. We were in like a huge rush, and then like after we got the boat rigged up, and then our coach Hamish was like, why don't you go and just get into it? We're like, nah, we haven't sailed for a bit, we don't want to just go out cold. And he's like, no, go for it. Best way to get into it. So we kind of like got a little bit more of a hurry on, got out to this regatta. So now we're doing 3 days out of the 4, and started off that day really well, got like a couple of firsts or something like that, and then basically went on to win the regatta somehow, even though we'd had to carry like we had like 3 last places from the first day and like 25 boats. So that was a classic.
I hope word got out to the other sailors about like what you'd been through, just to sort of rub it in. How
no, they did, because like some of the other, I think like Giles Scott was one of the other people who he like sails with Ineos now and gold medal in the Finn in Tokyo, and he was there that night. He didn't even make it on his flight, so like the word had got back to like the British sailing team. It was like quite a big night, and someone else that like had come to a similar fate. So I mean, it was just we were pretty lucky we even made it, to be honest.
You mentioned the the organisation to try and get through the airports, etc., etc. Do you guys travel just the two of you, or do you have a little entourage, or is it down to you guys to make that all work? And are you good at organisation and making sure you've got everything that you need in order to compete?
Yeah, so all the 49er stuff, all the Olympic stuff's a pretty tight team. So predominantly we fly with just the two of us, or sometimes our coach Hamish. And then, at times you sometimes have the wider New Zealand sailing team, like the Olympic sailing squad, and they offer like a reasonable amount of like logistical support, whatnot. But I think that's the unique thing about that Olympic environment in sailing is that you're doing a lot of the organisation yourself. So for Peter and I, we'd be across every single aspect of the campaign, and whether it's knowing how a boat was going to get from one venue to the next, or how we're going to get the sails, or which accommodation we're staying in, or every single detail would be across.
Were you good at that at the start? Or did you have to learn that as you
No, you definitely learn it. Like, I mean,
Like, did you ever get to a regatta and like, shit, we've got to send the boat? Or any horror stories like that?
No, I don't think we forgot a boat, but there's certainly times where you forget like a minor part or a bit of clothing or something. But no, I think that was definitely one of our strengths, just that like attention to detail across so many things. And as you go on, our lives got busier. It was something that we really pride ourselves on still nailing, like not trying to let some bits slacken off or whatnot. Just you kind of just end up having to have a bit late at night to make sure you get it sorted or whatnot. But yeah, we're pretty famous for leaving things quite to the last minute. So if we're packing still at like 1 or 2 or 3 in the morning before a flight the next day, that'd be pretty normal.
That's the best way to do it.
Yeah.
So 28 major regattas you won between 2012 and 2016. 28. And 6 world titles. And then it's Rio, and you get named as the leaders of New Zealand, was it flag bearers, lead the team into the stadium, and you win gold. Like that experience, looking back now, I mean, a gold medal, from the beginnings of what we talked about, must be something that is one of the proudest moments of your career, I imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. That whole experience in Rio was, phenomenal. It was definitely now, even we look back and know that was, probably the proudest moment of our careers, to firstly be named as the team captains and carrying the flag into Maracanã Stadium. And actually not just that part, but I think 2 days earlier when we had the announcement, we basically were in this like semicircle of at the village, and like all of our other teammates were there. The whole rest of the team, everyone was in the number ones, and they were all there. Didn't know who the team captains were at that stage, and we basically walked in and had the opportunity to speak to them at that stage. And
Must have had a hunch. Did you have a hunch that it was you?
No, we knew already.
Oh,
so,
sorry.
but they didn't know. So everyone's kind of like, But then you've got like New Zealand's best athletes there, and you've got the honour to lead that team and the country into the Olympic Games.
Because you get cloaked. Is that when you get cloaked then?
Yes. So we had them on. Obviously, it was the first time having 2 at that point. Now we have like in Tokyo, we have a male and a female leader into the team the whole time. So, that kakaho was awesome. Actually, it was. The whole thing was super cool. And then we had like 5 days or maybe a week before we actually started racing. So it was for us personally, even though it was, some people saw it as like added pressure or whatnot, we actually loved the experience, and we kind of needed that kind of, I guess, that all the added boost to like really get us into the right mindset. And then, from that point we could just really concentrate on our work and get stuck in. But it was neat.
Did you have a hierarchy on who held the flag, or did you swap halfway through?
No, if it was Pete carried the flag, and I think I carried it at the end. I was just there helping along, making sure I didn't stuff it up, But it was amazing. My brother and cousin, who actually was working in the Olympic event, they were there like as we walked out the gate, so that was pretty neat to have, know that they were there at that point.
Awesome.
Do you have moments with Pete where, you've been with him for 10 years or so at this point, where you give him a little nudge and like, holy shit, Pete, like, look at what we're doing.
Yeah.
This is crazy.
Yeah. Well, I think there was actually a photo that came out of us doing a selfie, which we never normally do, really.
Yeah.
But like, at the point, we kind of like done the first part, and we were just like, holy fuck, like, look at this, it was pretty amazing. So
I don't know if you can do a around the world race and a selfie. I think those two things don't really
Yeah,
go together.
yeah.
Eh?
Hard to get you
Sailors
both
will
in
be
shot if
frowning
you're in
upon
different boats.
on that behaviour. Okay, so we're going to get to the America's Cup stuff soon, but I just want to sort of close the loop on the Olympics. Through the highs of Rio, and then I don't want to say disappointment, because a silver medal is incredible, but from where you had been and winning everything, obviously your focus shifted in that time. How difficult was it to win silver?
Yeah, well, I guess, I mean, we've had two talking about the ocean race, and then that's the 2 points of my career where we haven't quite achieved when you really wanted to, But I guess at the time in Tokyo, to lose by such a small margin, right on the finish line like that was, it was hard to hide the disappointment when we'd put so much into it. Like it was, but at the same time, it's a silver medal at the Olympics, and I think we remind ourselves at the time that, like I think it was in London actually, where we were so ecstatic to have won the silver medal because we'd been on this learning curve like that, and at that time I remember seeing people that like got bronze or silver, and they were like, gutted. And you're like, mate, still, medal at the Olympics. And I couldn't quite fathom it at that point, and I think we definitely remind ourselves after Tokyo about that moment and tried to really still enjoy it for what it was. And but in saying that, it was difficult to hide that that emotion at the time when you'd come so close. But it was a tough road in. Like it was always going to be hard to back up from the America's Cup 3 months later to try and basically get to the top of our game. And in that time was, it was very, very challenging, and we got bloody close, Yeah. That's what makes it even tougher.
It was an emotional games, right? We've spoken to Sarah Hiddeny, we've spoken to Tom Walsh on the podcast as well, and they both kind of reflected on those two in particular had very publicised emotional moments. But Tom Walsh in particular talking about the lead-in and how challenged all of the tests, all of the anxiety about wanting to avoid catching COVID-19. Yeah. Was it the same experience for you guys?
Yeah, it was the same for us. We'd been in New Zealand for a year and then had the America's Cup, and then had to get straight out. We were off to Sail GP event straight away afterwards, and then we went on to Europe from there, and then we did one trip back to NZ going into MIQ. But that whole time was pretty challenging. Like at first you didn't really know, like they weren't telling you like if you'd had COVID how long beforehand you could then compete and whatnot. And it was challenging. Like definitely, even leaving New Zealand was hard at that stage, but pretty quickly once you got over it, you kind of knew you had to go about your work, and you were just trying to be as smart as you could not to catch it and to stay healthy all the way up. But at the same time, you couldn't wrap yourself in cotton wool, and especially for us because we'd needed to get race experience to get time back on the boat. Like the thing with the 49er is you can't just step back in and think 10 years of experience is going to help you.
Is that right?
It's so much like of the timing between Pete and I, the intuition between us, to get all those real, like you can get back to a pretty good level relatively quickly, but to finish it off is challenging. I mean, we didn't quite get there in the end. Like we definitely weren't as good as what we have been at other times. There were some parts of Tokyo that we sailed our best in that particular, but when we talk back to before Rio, when it was that real well-rounded team, we weren't quite good enough in all areas. So that was, it was just challenging to those 3 or 4 months of just trying to we were just scrambling to try and get back to that level, and we both wanted it so badly. We knew we didn't deserve anything, but we pushed hard for it.
How does the debrief go post silver? You've obviously walked away from the 49ers, or parked that, however you want to say it. But like, is it a day after you reflect on what we could have done differently, and then you make the decision? Like, how hard was it to make that decision?
Yeah, no, we gave ourselves time for sure, and I think back half of last year was probably the first time that we've really stopped for 10 years and kind of taking the time to look ahead for a bigger plan and take in just what we've achieved in the journey that we've been on. So we didn't rush to that, and obviously we made the final decision to hang up the boots for now at least a couple of months ago. But I guess we were both heading that way. We just wanted to make sure that that's how we felt once like that initial emotion had subsided. I guess that's the thing. You always want to make the decision when you're in the right headspace, and you a lot of people, especially after something big like that in life, you go on to making a decision really fast, and it's a bit more emotive. So yeah, we definitely took our time with that, and we're lucky we got such good people around us that can help, and have been around us for 10 or 12, 13 years that can help us with those discussions.
You're lucky you got a few other things to keep you busy, so keep your mind occupied. I want to talk America's Cup. Do you have memory? How old would you have been in '95? The whole Red Sox campaign. Is that
six?
in your...
So 6, yeah.
Do you remember any of that?
Not really, to be honest. I remember we were, I think, in the final race in San Diego. We had it on TV at home. It must have been like a real small sort of those boxy as TVs.
I think all the TVs were.
Is that what? Yeah.
Yeah, a little 14-inch NEC number.
Yeah.
And my brothers and I were actually around the rocks. I can't remember what we were doing, looking for crabs or something like that up north, just because we live by the water there. And I remember someone yelling out like that the last race was on, so we rushed back home and watched it. But yeah, I mean, I wasn't into sailing at all at that stage. Like we were always in and around the ocean, but no, I wasn't into sailing as a sport at that stage.
San Fran 2013. You're silver medalists. Where are you? I've got vivid. I was in Queenstown watching that all unfold. 8-1 up, and then the wheels fell off. Do you remember where were you watching that from?
Yeah, so we were at the start of it. We were actually in San Francisco. We'd just raced the Youth America's Cup, so in like the small catamarans, and then we'd headed to, after a couple of days, we'd headed to Marseille for the 49er Worlds actually, and we were basically racing alongside it at the same time. So we were like racing during the day in Europe, and then it was on like in the evening there with the time zone, like I think racing from like 10 till 1 a.m. or something. So every night we were just like, yeah, anyone else just like tuning in, and just, yeah, it was tough, man. Just like, yeah, because we'd had a little, because we'd been in San Fran and been quite close to the team, but we'd like, so we knew enough, but not, we were basically watching as spectators. But yeah, it was brutal.
You ended up joining Team New Zealand the year after. Do you remember watching it, thinking out hypotheticals of, if they win, it'll mean this. If they lose, it could mean that we're pulled in? Like, do you think like that?
Not really at that stage. I mean, not really, to be honest. Like, we were definitely trying to, at that stage, get as much experience as we could, like in the professional sailing, in that sort of industry. I guess we were taking opportunities when they presented itself, like doing some other series around Europe and stuff. But the America's Cup's so hard to know, because you don't know that, like if there was every chance that Team New Zealand would have stopped after that, that it wouldn't have continued. So then, it's really hard to know. So it wasn't until got back and realized that the team was going to go again, and then and that's when the opportunity came up for Pete and I.
Yeah, and when you do link up, is that another moment like, holy shit, Pete, we're doing it, we're the America's Cup, baby? We're New Zealand.
Yeah, it was actually classic. Since we're talking about the Olympics, because I think it must have been like December or something that we signed, even though we didn't get announced till January, February the next year. But we'd like gone out for a drink just with, I think it must have just been the two of us. Like, we don't do that very much, but like it's like quite a big step in our careers. And we were at Danny Doolan's of all places. Like, it must have been like a Tuesday or something. I don't know.
Has to have been a Tuesday to get to. Yeah. Actually, could be any night at Danny Doolan's with just two of you.
And the New Zealand Olympic committee, like their team that we'd just been, knew pretty well from London and stuff, they were all out for their Christmas do. And they were like looking at us like, what are you guys up to, and we're like, oh, we're out for it, It's just cruising, and like obviously we were like celebrating. And anyway, I don't even know if I've told them since. They're probably just like, what? Shit, they're a real tight team, just, Tuesday night.
Tuesday drinks. It's a secret to their success.
So since then, it couldn't have gone much better, really. Your path with the America's Cup, winning 2017, winning in New Zealand. Reflecting on that part of the journey, I mean, it was you and Pete in a little boat, and it was just you two operation, and now you're head of this huge operation, right? Like, there's like 80 people involved in Team New Zealand.
Plus, yeah.
Did you feel a sense of pressure as your position got elevated and you became the main man?
Well, I mean, you certainly go into a very big organisation, and I guess our role from Bermuda to here in Auckland to this next one's like it's changed throughout. You know, we haven't just been thrust straight into it, and yeah, that responsibility and the wider team's grown as we've been involved for longer. But no, it is a big shift from going from a team where there's, you know, Pete and I and a couple of other really tight people in our team to being one of 80, 100, 130 people in this organisation. So you really got to, and you're not going to be across everything, obviously, compared to the Olympics where, you know, as we talked about before, you're like, you know, details and everything. Whereas you got to be across your role and do your role really well, and trust the person next to you is going to do theirs, and then collectively you sort of come together. So yeah, that was a real learning curve, and you know, now looking back, like, you kind of been lucky to see different teams operate, you know, whether it was Map Free or this, or now with our own team with Sail GP, you see all these teams come together and how collectively you can be the best unit. But yeah, it's been an awesome journey, right from 2013 to now.
That's a part that people don't kind of realise, is that Team New Zealand, you think, oh yeah, it's the dudes on the boat and it's a couple of guys on shore that do all the other bits and but it's a massive organisation, eh? And when it's overseas, everyone goes. Like, I could imagine it's like staff meetings. Is it all in staff meetings? Do you know everybody that works in the organisation?
Yeah, no, you do. Well, at least
those Zoom calls must have a lot of windows on them when you're in lockdown.
Yeah, it's a huge organisation, and everyone plays a very important role. You know, the sailing team, the last couple of times, been between 10 and 15 people. So you're only a really small percentage of the whole organisation. Obviously, you're the ones that have to go out with the complete package and race to beat the opposition on the water. But to get to that point, it's a huge team effort, right from, you know, the initial design stuff structurally to building the boat to, and then going out testing and developing it all the time. So yeah, it's awesome how that all comes together, and we're pretty lucky at the team that a lot of the core people have been the same right the way through, and, you know, people grown and developed and taken on different responsibilities, and, you know, I guess you can then work to people's strengths a little bit more after you've done it 2 or 3 times, and you know what works and what doesn't. So yeah, it's a pretty neat group we got there.
I kind of feel like it's an interesting one. Like, you know how in rugby, when Richie McCaw was at the top of his game, right? Everyone was sort of like, yeah, he's pushing the rules, like pushing on the edge of the rules and how things play. It's probably the same in Team New Zealand, except no one would ever know who the Richie McCaw is, because it'll be like a designer who you just don't know. They don't get any. Is that kind of accurate? Is that like a really good analogy?
Yeah.
Without tooting my own horn, is that amazing insight?
Because I thought about that for an hour and a half driving up here, and I didn't want to say anything, and then I thought, no, shit, I'm going to go for it.
Yeah, I mean, there's like
you're kind of the Dan Carter.
No.
Put McCaw's in the background.
There's like, because it's such a development race, as well as, you know, compared to the other types of sailing we do, like the technology side of it and creating the fastest boat is such a big part of it. And there's, you know, a lot of, I guess, collaboration between the sailing team and the design team to get to that point. But yes, there's a lot of very smart people that in their own right are the best in their field, whether it's the software person or the CFD analyst or whoever, the structural person. Like, people in the team are the best in their field across like so many different skill sets. So yeah, people like in Bermuda, for example, saw the bikes, and everyone talks about the bikes and that being the difference between us and Oracle, whereas that was one factor because it helped us to produce more power, which meant we could control the sails and things better. But that was only like one thing that the team did. There's like, to get to that point is like another 100 things, you know, and but the public or people don't necessarily relate to all of them. So yeah, there's heroes right throughout the team.
What was more of a buzz for you, winning in Bermuda or defending in New Zealand?
Oh, yeah, really hard question. I thought about it a bit, but the initial time to to win it and bring it back was pretty unreal, really. Like, there's so many people within that group that had been trying to win the cup for Team New Zealand for their whole careers, since 2003, really. Some people have been through, and some people then joined in 2007, and another 10 years. So yeah, it was seeing the look on their faces in Bermuda when we achieved that success was unreal, and then bringing it back to New Zealand and seeing what it meant to people all around the country with that tour that we did was, it was awesome. And then on the flip side, here racing in the Hodeka Golf and just seeing everyone out there watching on, seeing New Zealand at its best, and then knowing that the rest of the country was behind too is, that's a different buzz, and obviously very amazing too. But I think I'd probably go to Bermuda if I got put on the spot, just because of that initial of winning the cup and what it meant.
It really is amazing how it pulls the country together, because it's quite a niche sport, really. Like, not many people I know have sailed or been on a boat. But when the America's Cup, you look at the analytics, I do all the live blogs and things, for the last couple of America's Cup. The audience is huge, the biggest thing, bigger than the All Blacks. Day after day, those live
experts
blogs
too
are cranking, and our columnists writing about the America's Cup and the secret sailing professor and things, they're all the biggest hits. It's the audience is ginormous in New Zealand for America's Cup. And what was your question of how big is it worldwide, right?
Yeah, is it the same when you kind of go outside of the country, the syndicates that participate, or do people not really know?
In parts, I think, it always surprised me the people that don't know. But yeah, you're right. Sailing is general terms quite a small sport, but there's different different things that people then connect with. It was the Whitbread or the America's Cup or Sail GP now that people kind of have connection to. But I think for sure, the America's Cup, especially back through when Australia first won it off the Americans and stuff, people in America still talk about that now. But then, I would think the way New Zealand gets behind that's probably pretty unique, I would say.
It's cool how it also kind of brings an interesting cast of characters into the team as well. Like Stephen Ferguson, son of Ian
Ferguson, yeah.
Alex Ferguson.
Sir Alex.
Not many people know that.
Did Rob Waddell jump on a boat?
Yeah.
In the past as well. I got that right, haven't I?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's it kind of brings all these different kind of athletes from different sports into it, which I guess says a lot about the boat itself and kind of how it's just a piece of machinery, far beyond what you kind of think it is.
Yeah. Well, I think all those athletes you mentioned in general have come, from high performance sport elsewhere, and with the power demands in grinding and cycling and where the sport's gone, there are specific roles on board the boat which are just the athlete needs to produce the most power they can, and that means going into the diverse range of sports to get that athlete, and that'll be the same this time round too.
Get Tom Walsh on there grinding.
Yeah, we're back to cycling this time round. So.
Okay, so sort of wrapping things up, we've talked about so much, and we haven't even talked about Sail GP, which you're just back from in Bermuda. Things haven't quite been going to plan, but what's going on? What is the difference between Sail GP and the racing that you've been so successful at?
Yeah, so we've just started Sail GP season 3, our second season in the league. It's been a pretty steep learning curve, to be honest. Probably liken it to back where we were in the 49er in those early days in the lead up to London, where although the boat's quite similar to the one we raced in Bermuda in the America's Cup in 2017, the F50s now, they are a little bit different, and especially different to how our boat was and how we controlled it in Bermuda then. To figure out the boat and how to get the most out of it's taken a little bit. We're sailing the boat in a little bit of a different way, where Andy Maloney's doing the flight control, which was my role, and I'm controlling, back to your word here, the trimming of the sails. So I'm control the wing sail. So that's for us to get those positions down pat. It's probably taken a little bit longer than what we would have hoped, but yeah, it's difficult. I mean, last year as a team, it was hard with the Olympics being right in the middle. I mean, ideally we wouldn't have had, America's Cup Sail GP.
A little bit of a distraction.
Yeah, but that's, like the Olympics getting shifted. I mean, no one can control that. So, getting that consistency and getting, I guess, between the team was hard. And, compared to Olympics or America's Cup, where you can go and put many hours on the boat to like hone your skills, and you don't actually get that. So once you're into it, like we are now for season 3, like we're racing in Chicago in a couple of weeks, and we get like 2 training days before the event. So that's what we had pretty much the whole of last year. So you're on this big learning curve, but you're not really getting much time in the boat. So yeah, it's been challenging, but also rewarding in a lot of ways. It's been fun to be leading a new team with Pete, sort of as co-CEOs there, and build the team from the ground up. And yeah, it's been neat to do that.
Because how many people are you leading in that organisation?
So our team's around about 15 odd. It's, but the unique thing about Sail GP is there's a lot of shared resource. So
right.
you work with like a centralised team quite a lot. So there's a lot of people in that pool that you work with on certain projects.
And is the idea of Sail GP kind of like the 7 circuit, like that kind of condensed TV friendly, lots of different places around the world?
Tell you what, my friend, you are nailing these analogies. That's real nice.
On fire. Yeah,
you could say no.
I think it is like that. It's, I guess, Formula One style a little bit, where although that the Formula One obviously is a lot of development, more like the America's Cup, but the way that you race quite often. So at the moment we race at 10 or 11 different stops around the world, so pretty frequent. When we get into like July, August, September in Europe, we're racing every couple of weekends. So yeah, it's a style of racing that hasn't been done before in sailing, having like these boats which are at the real top end of technology, and they are super fast, hard boats to sail on a really tight race course in some of the most iconic places, around the world. So yeah, it's a new formula, and it's, it's been challenging for us in New Zealand to grow the brand with, because people haven't seen it, like it's like knows the America's Cup or the Whitbread, or, sometimes maybe us through the Olympics, but the Sail GP is, what's that? It's a bit different, but yeah, I think it is an awesome format and style of racing, and I think it's really going to have a long future in sailing.
Larry Ellison's dream child, right? He founded it. You ever meet him?
Yeah, I've met Larry a couple of times. Met him on the dock in Bermuda after we beat him in the America's Cup. He was there to congratulate us with alongside Russell, which was real nice. But yeah, I guess he and Russell had this vision. It was actually kind of what they wanted to do with the America's Cup. How do they won it again, turning it more into this Grand Prix style of sailing? But we, we bet them and took it in another direction, or kept it how it historically has been, which is great for the America's Cup. But they've gone on to create this Sail GP, and yeah, it's really starting to gain momentum.
And Chicago, so that's a freshwater.
Yeah, it's
course,
on the lake.
right?
Yeah, nice.
My man.
You're on this.
Yeah,
That guy's on. He's on.
Is that the only freshwater stop on the circuit?
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, Chicago is a pretty.
Is it? Oh, the Windy City.
Yeah, the Windy City. Yeah, and they're a pretty big sporting city. So yeah, we've raced there once before, and the people there really get behind it. So it'll be a good stop. But yeah, we got a bit of work to do to get to where we want to go, and yeah, it's a good challenge. I mean, we're not stoked on the performances we've been having, and it's been pretty disappointing, especially in Bermuda when we've been showing quite a lot of promise in the lead up, and then to not perform like that was really disappointing. But saying that the challenge we got in front of us and the opportunity to grow as a team's one that's pushing us pretty hard.
We've covered a lot, and everything you've done has involved a large amount of travel, right? Like you spend a lot of your life away overseas. Is sailing kind of a young man's game? Like, can you project forward and think, yeah, I've probably got like another 10 years or 15 years? And if so, can you think about what you might do after you stop sailing professionally?
Yeah, I mean, it probably hasn't been one of my strong suits to plan too far into the future, as we talked about before, but really like to throw everything into, the things that we've got in front of us. But, I mean, we're lucky in sailing that, we've got a lot of mates in the Olympic environment that have represented the country for it at the Olympic Games, and their chosen sport hasn't got the longevity or the professional side of it, and we're lucky that our sport has, so that's given a lot of us opportunities to be able to do it as a profession going forward. So yeah, I think for me personally, competing, there's still a lot I want to do. The first two with the America, trying to get 3 in the America's Cup, and then trying to get this LGP team to the front of that league is the two ones right in front of me, and then from there there's still the ocean race stuff and a few other things. So, and that's me competing, and then I mean, we're already sliding into that management style and running teams. So that can be something we can do, as long as we kind of really want to, I guess.
Yeah, a lot of options.
You still an Umaga ambassador?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Does that connect you with other Umaga ambassadors around the world? Have you had any cool kind of stories of getting together and changing your time?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's a pretty awesome company or brand to be a part of. We've been in the family with them for like 5 or 6 years now, and I mean, they do some awesome activations around the Olympics. They had like in Rio, when we were early days with them, they had this Omega house right on Copacabana Beach, and they invited all of us in on for one night for the after competing, which is pretty unreal. And I mean, the last couple of years have been pretty hard to do too much, but certainly looking forward to they've got an awesome, I guess, network of athletes right across different, well, not just athletes actually, a lot of different ambassadors across heaps of range of different things. So it'd be neat to link up with some of them.
I told a few people that you were coming on the podcast, and my wife's friends took particular interest. So I'm asking on behalf. Are you? What's your marital status? You're single at the moment, or you're in a relationship?
Yeah. I'm single at the moment.
Single at the moment, because I've heard Pete might be in a new relationship. So I wonder if maybe he doesn't have so much time for you anymore. It might be.
If I'm getting a bit lonely because Pete's
those Tuesday night drinks down at Danny Doolan's. Tuesday nights for one now.
I might need to test out our friendship. I'll text him after this and see what he's up to.
Is it seriously though? Is it tough to try to form a relationship when you're on the move so much in so many different cities around the world?
Yeah, I mean, our lives for 10 or 15 years have, until COVID year when we're in NZ for a year, it would have been like 2 or 3 months would be the longest you'd be in one place, and then quite often you'd be away for 4 or 5 months a year in different places. So I guess that side of it is, there's a lot of awesome things about having the opportunity to represent your country doing the thing you love. But some of those things, or like your close friendships or family, some of that stuff's it is challenging, but you put the time into the things that you, I guess, are closest to you and you care about the most.
Hey, I'm single too, just for Bonnie's friends. So I hope you don't just throw that out for all the guests that we have on.
We've got a wide audience these days, so someone will have a nibble there. That has been so good. I've got one more thing on my list, and then I think we're done. Can you still hold your breath for 3 minutes?
Yes. I think, yeah.
Longer? How long can you go?
Well, it depends if you're doing it in a pool, like statically, or...
Yeah. Longest you've gone?
What's yours, Steve? You did the Wim Hof stuff.
Yeah, that Wim Hof stuff I got near about 3, just under 3, okay. I think.
I think maybe like, I think it's around about 4 minutes or something like that. But over, I mean, free diving is one of my favourite pastimes. So, love getting out in the ocean for that. So, we did, when I was doing that, we were doing like some pool sessions down at Tepper Baths, just when we like weren't getting out that much, I think, and we were doing quite a lot of laps and then doing some like static stuff. But now, I just go diving, so you don't really push it so much when you're diving.
Yeah. Safety
Mum, if you're listening.
Right, that has been amazing. Thank you so much. I know we sort of spoke before you came in how, you're away so much, you like reflecting, but you don't often get the chance to do it. So hopefully you've enjoyed it as much as we have because, man, we've covered a lot and it's been really, really cool. Shane?
No, your sporting kind of side of it and the success you've had is awesome. But what I really like is that element that you're bringing around the connection to what you have done so much stuff on, which is the ocean. And I think seeing that kind of progress as you go through is going to be a really powerful thing for you personally. So I look forward to seeing how that progresses.
Cool. Thanks, Shane. Yeah. Thanks very much for having me on. It's been awesome.
Cheers.
Cool.